complicated until you start using them, until you start understanding those tools. All right, so for the homework, this is what the next homework sheet is, which is this pose study worksheet. Okay, you're taking these, and again, we're putting a piece of paper on the front of it, and we're tracing on top of it. But we're not tracing just the full person. What we're going to be tracing is their bones. Okay, so what we're looking at here is, if you look, this guy here is a good example. These little circles here are the hips. Those are where the hips would be for that. Maybe they're a little bit off. This is where the knee is. This is where the ankle is. This is where the toes are. Same thing here. Here's the knee. Here's the ankle. Here's the ball of the foot, not necessarily the toes. Here's the shoulder. Here's the spine. Here's the elbow. Here's the wrist. Can't really see the fingertips. Okay? So we're drawing out. We're just putting little circles for the major joints inside the body, and then we're just drawing lines to connect them. That's how easy it is. And then just to make it look cooler, I outlined it, and it looked cooler. Okay? I'll walk you through one of these with this. Look at that. Now I can draw on the board. See? So if we're looking at this girl here, what we do is we just do this. We just say, here's where her hip is, and I'm just estimating. It doesn't have to be exact. Here's where her knee is. Here's where her knee is. Here's where her ankle is, the ball of the foot, ankle, ball of the foot. Here's her shoulder, here's her elbow, here's her wrist. And here's her neck, okay? And then that's obviously her spine is right there. And then we just connect these. And then connect this, that, and that. Okay? That's what you're doing for each one. That's the bare minimum is right there. And then if you want to outline it, like I said, it looks kind of cool just to kind of go through and outline the shapes, because then it actually gives a little more structure to it. And you're actually learning two things with this exercise. Okay? And so on. One thing that we're learning is where joints are inside the body. Okay, you may not pay attention to it unless you're doing, unless you're in figure class and they tell you to draw the joints of the body, or you have to kind of draw some of that stuff. But when you do any kind of animation, you have to think about the mechanics of what goes on in that animation, like how things work. In our first assignment that we're going to do, we're going to be building a little computer desk. And on the computer desk, we're going to have a couple things animating. One of them is a Newton's cradle, one of those ball things where you lift it up and it hits, and then it goes back and forth. I'm sure you've seen those, or the craze nowadays, or they were a long time ago. So we have to understand, where does that thing, how does it move, right? We can't just like take a ball and arbitrarily just animate this ball moving. We have to figure out, how does that Newton's cradle work? And the way it works is that there's a pivot up top where the strings are, and there's a ball down here. And as we lift up the ball, it's pivoting on those strings. Same kind of thing. When you get into like doing any kind of further animation stuff past that, then we start learning about that structure. We're also looking at the posing. When we get into, not this class, but when we get into further classes, you'll see how posing can become a much more important thing. If you drew something inside Photoshop and you picked a horrible pose, you'll kind of see that horrible pose come out in your drawing. So this kind of gives you like a good pose. In animation, we look at these and we say, if you can look at the silhouette, this little outline here, and you can see what's going on just by that, then typically it's a good pose. It's a good drawing, a good strong drawing that will kind of reinforce what you're trying to show. There's lots of ways we could show something like this. If I showed it from this angle, from the side or from the front or whatever that would be, you wouldn't really see that action. You'd see like the side of the person and their leg. You wouldn't really see them doing a cartwheel. You wouldn't see this person jumping if you were at some funky angle with it, okay? So when you're doing any kind of pose work, you want to find good, strong angles. When we set up our cameras, when we do animations, when we do any of our stuff, we have to find good poses that help kind of tell the story about our scene. Oops. Okay? So that's the homework. Any questions on the homework? No? Okay. There we go. Out of memory. I can't close my PDF. If you remember. So today what we're going to do is we're going to start our first project. I want to get into Maya and get you on the process of starting this thing. So if you don't have your computers booted up, boot it up. Obviously, it looks like everyone has theirs booted up. If you haven't copied your preferences, copy your preferences and then open up Maya. If you have copied your preference or haven't, then you can just follow me. This is the last time I'm going to show copying preferences. After this, you're going to be on your own to remember to copy your preferences every single day. Okay? So I'm copying my 2015 folder. I'm going into my Maya folder and deleting the 2015. And then I'm pasting my preference folder that I just copied. Okay? Then I can open up Maya. Okay. So the videos that we have for this assignment are all done within Maya 2014. From 2014 to 2015, some things have changed. Okay? Close that guy. So we're going to keep the same videos and use them. I'm just going to point you in the direction of the new tools that we're going to use. I'm also going to give you kind of get you started on the assignment and give you some tips as to how to watch and use the videos. The way that I do all my stuff is that I don't sit here and walk you through every single one of these things. What I like to do is every class go through and give you an introduction to some of the tools you're using. Okay? And you should look at these. In the email I sent out, I think I said October or something is when this is due. Maybe it was the other class, something else. This is going to be due in October, okay? We'll have about 4 weeks to work on this. So if you break this down into the amount of lectures here, there's about 7 lectures right here. So if this is due in 4 weeks, we have 4 weeks to do it. 4 times 2 is 8. That gives you 1 extra day to work on stuff. So if you figure 1 lecture a day, that's kind of a good rate to go at, okay? Or 1 lecture a class period, or 2 lectures a week, however you want to. Some of these aren't going to take that long, like number 5 and 6 aren't going to take that long, okay? Even 0 isn't going to take that long because that's kind of what I'm going to do today. So there's actually 4 big lectures that we have to go through, okay? Every step of the way we can kind of screw up. I don't want you to ever think that if you get stuck on one little thing that you can't move on to the next thing. Okay, if we get stuck on modeling the desk, we can skip the desk and go into the book, or skip the desk and go into the chair. If we don't like the way our desk is turning out, easiest way for a beginner, delete the desk and start again. Okay, if it took you, and I'll hear it 10 times in this class, if it took you an hour to build the desk the first time, it'll take you a half hour the next time, it'll take you 15 minutes the time after that, it'll take you 5 minutes the time after that. Okay, every time you do these steps, you become quicker and quicker and quicker. Going back to the first day when we did, I brought out the guitar and I was showing you all those things. In piano, there's these things called finger power. And it's essentially, here's a set of notes, and you have to play these notes over and over and over and over again to get your fingers used to doing those specific movements so that when you actually play it in a song, you don't have to think about it. Okay? So that's the same kind of thing here. You have to do this stuff over and over and over again to understand it. And it's not necessarily just your brain, it's actually your hand. You'll find that you just by doing the stuff over and over, your hand and your other hand will learn how to do these things. All right? So that's that. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, everyone has Maya up? Yes? Yes. Okay. All right. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Project Window. Okay? Every time we start a new project, we're going to make a new project. Last week we worked on Pac-Man. That was one project. Now we're starting a new project called Desk. And we're going to work on this project for several weeks. Okay? So we're going to make a new one right now called Desk. So we're going to hit New. We're going to call it whatever your last name is, _desk. And if you have a ununique name, last name, you might want to put your first name in there too. If your last name is Smith, you might want to put your first name in there too. Okay. Under the location, it should say your last name _fall14 /2540 or 2510 /work. If it doesn't, you click the folder and then you go and navigate for that work folder. D drive, Sarcona, 2510, work. And then we hit accept. Yes, ma'am. All right, once we have our work folder established, this is our project folder that we're going to be using. When we come in next time, we don't have to go through and make a new project folder because it's already created. Okay? We just have to tell Maya we're working on this project. When you come in next time, most likely, it'll default back to our first time we ever opened Maya and set our preferences where it went to playing around. Okay? So when we come in next time, we're going to go to File and we're going to say Set Project. So real quick, go to File, Set Project. And we're going to set it to something else. Okay? So just for now, set it to anything else inside your folder. It should go into your work folder. And in mine, I'm just going to click on the project folder. I'm not going to go into it. I'm just going to click right on Pac-Man and hit Set. Okay? What that does is it tells Maya I'm working on Pac-Man. That allows Maya to have everything set up. So if I go to File Open now, you don't have to go to File Open, but if I go to File Open, it'll take me right into my Pac-Man folder I clicked on, right inside of Scenes. Okay? That way I know my project is set. So now you're going to go back to File, Set Project, and you're going to set it back to Desk. Okay, and then hit Set. So every time you come in the morning or afternoon, you're going to go to File, Set Project, and make sure you click on that project folder you're working on. If you take your work home, you grab your whole folder, you put it on your desktop, however you copy it, and then you have to tell your computer at home, I'm setting my project to this folder. And that way your computer at home won't get confused. Okay? What typically happens is where's my desk? D drive, Sarcona, 10, work, desk, source images. Okay, so here is the path. If I wanted to put a picture in here, let's say a picture of a cat, I want to put a picture of a cat in my scene, I drop it into my source images folder. So Maya would read this as D:Sarcona 2510 work, Sarcona desk, source images, cat picture. Okay? At home, you don't have a D drive. Some of you have Macs at home, so there is no D drive. Some of you don't have these folders structure at home. So it would get confused if you didn't set your project. By setting your project, it eliminates all this work over here, and it simply says, I'm working on Sarcona desk. Oops. No. I'm working on Sarcona desk. And inside the source images of Sarcona desk, there's a picture of a cat. That's what I want to use. Okay? So Maya will automatically reference those folders correctly as long as you set the project every time. That's going to be confusing today. That's going to be confusing next class and the class after. Eventually, you'll start to get it and it'll start to make more sense. But just trust me, every time you work in Maya, don't double click your file. Just go to Set Project, tell it the project you're working on, and then go to File Open if we're doing a file that we've already worked on. Okay? So now that we're inside Maya, I'm going to go through some of the tools that we're going to be using. Okay? A lot of this that we're going to start off with, and let me do the desktop thing. All right, so a lot of the tools we're going to be using are going to be under this polygon menu. Okay? Typically, our workflow for this is that we model stuff first, we build the objects, and then we're going to texture them, and then we're going to light them, and then we're going to animate them, and then we're going to render it out. Okay? So our first step is modeling stuff. I'm going to go through some of the tools just so you can see some of these tools. So I want you to create a polygon plane. So create polygon plane. Okay? And I made mine big enough that I could see it. So I scaled it up to fit the grid. So just scale it up to fit as big as your grid is. Okay? Now just looking around, already I see that there's some differences between my grid, or my plane, and some of your planes. Some of your planes have 0 divisions on them. My plane has a bunch of divisions. Okay? These are the things that we have to pay attention to as we're working. As you're looking at my lecture and I have 20 divisions and you have 0 divisions, that's something to stop and say, okay, well, how do I fix it? How do I make sure that mine and his look alike? Okay, they're not going to look 100%, but they should look pretty close. So if I click on my polygon plane and I go over here to my input options and I click on the plane, remember, just like Pac-Man, we have different options that we can set. So I'm going to set these to 10 and 10, which is what my default was, and that should give me 10 divisions going one way, 10 divisions going another way. Okay? And I'm using a polygon plane. If you used a NURBS plane, which there is a thing up here, if I go to create NURBS, there's a plane in this as well. Okay? You have to make sure that you click on the appropriate surface. NURBS can do one thing, polygons can do something else. All right? So now that we have this, we're going to go under the Mesh Tools and go to the Show Modeling Toolkit. Okay? Now this is a 2014/2015 thing. The Modeling Toolkit is a way to kind of access a lot of these tools that we're going to be using over and over and over again. If you scroll down inside the list, you'll see all the stuff that's inside there. Okay, right inside that Modeling Toolkit under Mesh Tools, Show Modeling Toolkit. The best thing to do when something doesn't happen is to try to figure it out. Number one, you could Google it if you're at home. Ask me. I'm usually available. I got a Skype last night at like midnight, and I responded back to him. So just always check stuff out. Sometimes it's just a matter of trying to figure out why this isn't showing. Like on one, it wasn't showing this menu at all, and on the other one, it was a grayed out. Okay. So sometimes I can help with that right away. Sometimes it's even a matter of going into your preferences, closing Maya down, deleting your preferences or hiding them, moving them away, rebooting Maya, seeing if it's there. The other area that sometimes we have issues with is under Windows Settings Preferences, and there's a plugin manager. And sometimes, for whatever reason, stuff just doesn't load. So inside the plugin manager is literally all the stuff inside Maya you could turn on and activate and use, but it would just eat up a lot of memory, so sometimes they just become disabled. So typically if we're trying to troubleshoot it, we can just say loaded. It'll load all the plugins, and then we can see if it works, and then we know, okay, it's one of these plugins wasn't loaded. Okay, so stuff like Maya Muscle. If I wanted to go to Maya Muscle, which is this menu, and I couldn't find it, if I go into the plugins, there we go, and then I refresh. The menu is still here for whatever reason, but it won't work now because I've disabled that plugin. Okay, so just keep that in mind that sometimes we have to go around to figure it out. Okay.
Sean,
Yes, sir.
have you ever had?
I think it's your computer. I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause we got the project window to work.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the modeling toolkit and just drag it off. Okay. That way it's a floating window, and we can resize it. Come on. So we can see everything in there, okay, or most of the stuff. Now with this, I'm still somewhat new to the modeling toolkit, so I don't know every single option that's in here or every single way to make this thing do what I want it to, but typically this is your go-to thing. If we need to select faces, do you remember before we could right-click and go to faces? If we want to grab isoparms, like on Pac-Man's lip, we can right-click and go to isoparm, or we can hit F8 and get to that same thing. Well, in here we can just click on what we want. We want faces, we want edges, or we want vertex. So if I click on faces, you can go ahead and click on faces. You can see how it then allows me to select faces. Okay, so grab a clustering of faces somewhere off to one of the corners. Okay, once we have the faces selected, then we can come down here to the mesh editing tools and we can do different operations to them. So we're going to do an extrude. So click on the extrude. Nothing happened out here in our view, but if we hold down the middle mouse button and click and drag to the right, you'll see that we're actually extruding this thing up. Okay? So we did selected the faces, did the extrude, right there. Oh. And then middle mouse button drag out here, it'll extrude up that surface. Okay? this is going to be one of those tools that you're constantly going to be using, especially when you create your desk and your chair to model those. Now there's also hidden options, okay, things we don't see. If I hold down Shift and I middle click and drag, you can see how it now extruded a second piece of this. Oh, I should have done that. Yeah, it did. Okay. So it's extruding again, and I think if I hold Control, no, Control doesn't do it. Some of them do different things. Okay. So I could extrude and move it up and do that. All right. Now that's one way to do the extrude. Now I could also, if I go over and just scoot this over further so I can see my channel box area, if I open up the poly extrude face 2 or 1, whichever one's on top, okay, inside here you'll get a bunch more options. Now in mine I have options like offset, I have options like divisions, I have twist, I have taper, I have thickness, and so on. Okay? And if I look at one of these, it says translate Z 6.121. On mine, that's how far up I extruded it. So mine is remembering how far I moved this thing up. If I go to divisions and I use my middle mouse button out here, you can see how I can add divisions into this mix. Okay? So any one of those options on the right, the second you click on the word, it will become a virtual slider. Okay, so even like twist, I can click on twist. In this case, it's not going to do anything except I have other stuff set. And I think taper is the same way, yeah. Some of these, even though they're here, won't do anything until I have some other options set. Okay, so that's one way to do an extrusion. And this is, it's an okay way to do it. The other way to do it, grab another clustering of faces on your object. Doesn't matter where, just a clustering somewhere. And under the edit, under the edit mesh, you'll see that there's several different extrudes inside here. There is a vertex. If you look at the little grayed out thing, there's a vertex extrude. There's an edge extrude, and there's a face extrude. In version 2014, we didn't have this. It was 1. Okay, but typically we use face extrude, and click on that, and we'll get this little manipulator. Okay. This manipulator is the preferred way to extrude something because it allows us a lot more control than the other one did. All right, the other one allowed us just to move it up and down and then add another one on top of it. This one, if you look, it has options here for thickness, offset, and divisions. So if I go to the divisions here, not the divisions, if I go to offset and I just use my middle mouse button right on the word offset and click and drag to the right, you can see how I can offset this shape. Okay, and I can also click and drag on thickness and pull it up. So just by editing a couple of these things, you can see the kinds of shapes I can get, even adding in some divisions. Okay, you'll also see there's a blue arrow pointing straight up, a green arrow pointing off to one side, and a red arrow pointing off to the other side. There's boxes at each triangle arrow, and there's also a circle that's going around it. In Maya, this is called the universal manipulator. We can move, rotate, and scale all from one spot. We don't do that typically with this tool. All we do with this tool as far as the arrows go is grab this blue one and scoot the blue one up. Okay? Remember when we did that parallel, perpendicular, and tangent lines? That blue one moves that surface perpendicular to it. Okay, so it moves it away at that straight line. Even if I had a line like, or a face like this, so this new face that I built, I can extrude this, and you'll see if I grab that blue, it pulls it straight off that edge. Okay, it doesn't pull it straight up, it just pulls it perpendicular to that surface. All right, think of a person's face. If I had a face that went around where their nose would be, I could grab those faces and just pull it out for the nose. If I had a spot where the ear was, I could extrude it and pull it out for the ear. Okay? If I had a hand and all the digits weren't there yet, I could extrude out for each finger. Okay? So that's where we would use the extrude, is when we're trying to add new pieces of geometry to our surface. All right? I'm going to go back to object mode by hitting F8. There we go. Okay. I do like this modeling toolkit for selection stuff. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to grab the face selection tool, or sorry, the edge selection tool, which is the middle one. And just on one of these big blocky things that we built, I'm just going to double click this edge. Okay. And then I'm going to shift, double click the next edge, and go around and shift, double click each one of these edges. Okay. So basically what I've done is I've selected that perimeter of the top of that. Okay. Now what I'm doing here is I'm telling Maya, to these edges I want to do something. That's why I selected the edges. Okay. We grabbed the faces. We were able to pull the faces up and extrude the faces. Now I'm grabbing edges because I want to do something specifically to the edges. So we're going to scroll down and we're going to do a bevel. So if I click on the word bevel, you'll see that we get that bevel happening right here. Before it was perfectly straight up. Now we have a bevel that kind of tapers that side of it. And again, middle mouse button, we can adjust some of those properties. And here's where shift middle mouse button allows us to add some divisions and kind of smooth that whole thing out. Okay, so shift middle mouse button to the left gets rid of the divisions. Shift middle mouse button to the right adds divisions. And you can see the angle we're looking at this really is important. We can't be way out here trying to eyeball this to see what this is going to look like. We need to get in there. We need to get right along the edge of that and look at that profile and see what that profile looks like to get that shape that we want. Bevel is one of those tools that is super important for adding this kind of detail to things. If you look at anything from 3D, like let's say 20 years ago, when it was first being introduced, everything was square corners. Okay, it was just like blocks. Everything came to a right angle. There was no softness to them, and it looked very fake. Now that we can have more geometry in our scene, we can have stuff like rounded corners. So it's very cool to be able to add this kind of stuff, but we have to do it sparingly. Okay. Now, had I had this whole thing selected like this, and I went to bevel, oops, I'm going to go to the other bevel because I know the other bevel will do it. Bevel, there we go. Or not. Let me try it again. Bevel. Alright, I don't think it likes the surface. Let me just create something brand new just so we can see it happen. Okay, so I'm just going to extrude this out. Extrude that out there, wonderful. Grab this and extrude it. Great. Okay, so now if I grab this new surface and I go to bevel, this bevel, there we go. You can see how it bevels the entire surface and not just the one edge that I selected. So when we look at a surface like this, it doesn't want to bevel this entire surface because it's just too complex. Okay, there's just too much stuff going on, and some of these it'll actually error out and can't figure out where it should create this stuff. Okay, all the operations we're doing are mathematical formulas. So at some point in that math formula, it just says nope and it doesn't show it. Okay, typically there's an error somewhere. So it didn't work on this surface, but it did work on that one. Okay. Now we do beveling in a selective way. If I had a flat surface like this, I'm going to recreate this thing just so you can see it. And I grabbed this, oops, come on, that there, and I extruded it. Perfect. I wouldn't want to go into this entire surface and add a bevel to this entire surface. Because if you look at these divisions beforehand, and you look at them after, you'll see that I'm basically taking all the divisions that I have and I'm doubling them. Okay? Big deal, we're doubling our divisions. But that means that it's going to take longer for us to render. Some of you, it took an hour or half hour to render Pac-Man. These things that we're going to be doing could take hours and days to render out. So we want to make sure that we maximize our work as best as possible. Okay? So when we do bevels, we add them only in the spots where we need them. If I need a bevel right here along the top edge, that's the only spot I want to have that bevel happening. Okay, so something like that, let's say I wanted to bevel there, right here too. So I'm grabbing all of these edges I want beveling to happen. Perfect. I'm going to my bevel. And then you can see I can add a bevel just to those faces that need it, or just those edges that need it, and I save myself a lot of hassle when it comes to my geometry. Now, like I said, it's mathematical. It's never going to be perfect all the time. If I look at this face right here, this face is messed up. When it did the bevel, if you look at the wireframe of it, you can see how these lines are just kind of like crossing each other. That's why I didn't like it. So I could play with these settings over here, see if I can get the options that would work correctly. I don't think that's going to allow me to get options that I want that would make that look correctly. So sometimes it's going to boil down to actually deleting, because we can delete faces. And then I can go through and I can rebuild them. So I'm going to go to somewhere in here, Mesh Tools, that's where it is, Append. And I'm going to re-put this face back in like that. Okay? So sometimes we will go through because the tool gave us an error, and we'll delete stuff and we'll add stuff in. Okay? Alright. So now this next tool that we're going to use is called the let me make sure it's the right one. Yes, the multi-cut. We're going to click on the multi-cut tool, and what this allows us to do is it allows us to create polygons the way we want to see them on here. Okay? So in this case, we extruded a square. So what if we wanted to extrude something that wasn't square? So we can use this by just drawing a shape. So you see how I'm just clicking on edges just to basically define a shape. And then I hit enter, and now I've created a brand new shape that I could grab the faces on and extrude. So just click around and grab some, connect some edges to create a little shape in the middle. Okay, and then once you have that, then you can go back to the face selection. You have to get out of the tool. Right now I'm still in that multi-cut, so I have to just click off the multi-cut, then go to faces, and then I can grab the faces. And then I can extrude, middle click and drag. Wonderful. There it is. Okay, so as you're doing these things, this modeling toolkit can be a help. A lot of the tools have been moved into this Mesh Tools. Okay, so in the video when I say go to Edit Mesh, it's either going to be under Mesh Tools or it's going to be under Edit Mesh. Look at what we've done in this little demo, and those are the three basic tools we're going to be using, is the extruding, splitting, and beveling. Okay, and then we have one more that we're going to use, and this one is called the Insert Edge Loop tool. So if you just go to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop tool, this one allows you just to add a division. So I'm going to click on an edge. Okay, I'm clicking on a vertical edge to add a horizontal edge. So you can see how I'm adding an edge right here. Okay. So do a little practicing, just get used to what that's doing. As we click on one edge, it goes the other way. Some people think that it's going to go the one way, but it doesn't. It has to know which direction we're going to go. Okay, so now let's make a new scene and let's start our actual desk. So new scene, don't save any of the stuff that we did. At any point, if you're working on your stuff and you're like, I just don't understand this tool, I'm not really confident in using it, save your stuff, go off to the side of your screen, make a model and just play with that tool so you understand it better. If you're not comfortable with the bevel tool, don't do your bevel on your actual final piece of geometry, just make a separate tool, a separate object, and say I want to play with the bevel tool on this thing. And say, what happens if I grab this edge and I do a bevel? And then I grab this edge and I do a bevel. And then I grab this edge and do a bevel. And then I grab this edge and do a bevel. And then I grab this and do a bevel. Okay? That way you can kind of understand the tool before you start applying it to your final piece, because you don't want to screw that up, okay? So I'm going to go back to where you guys are, which is right there. All right, so we're building a desk, and I'm going to show you what this desk is going to look like. This actually, reading table, the tutorial I found a long time ago, it had a cool desk, book, and chair in it, so that's where we got the idea from. Okay, and I'm going to go to Google Images because there was that image right there. And that's essentially what we're going to be modeling here is that table, that chair, and the books. Okay? So the table, if we look at it, and I make this bigger, we want to break it down into what the shape is. Okay? Now, if this was an actual piece of furniture in our house, it's built of wood. It's built of pieces of wood just cut up into strips and then glued together or nailed together or whatever. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this top portion, the desk part of it, and we're going to take that desk part, that top part of it, and using a bunch of extrusions, we can create the shelf here, the sides here, the top there, and the legs. Okay? It takes a little bit of planning, but we'll be able to do it. So we're going to go back to Maya and create a polygon cube. And I'm just going to resize it to fit that top desk portion. I'm just also going to kind of float it in the air, you know, where the desk surface would be. There's no magic numbers. Just try to resize it so that it has about the same proportions as mine. Okay? Just for, you know, your own reference, if you look at my move tool, you'll see that my blue arrow here is what is the longest one. If yours is X, that's fine. It'll still work. Okay? You just have to make sure that if I say Z, you do it to the X. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay? So what we need to do is we need to add divisions to this. Okay? So on my screen, I don't know how yours is, I need to collapse this just so I can see it better. You don't have to do that if you don't need to. All right? So I'm going to go to the polycube over here, and I want to change my divisions. I want to add divisions under here. Oops. Let me hide my grid. I don't need to see that. I'm going to add divisions under here for the leg. Just like we did the extrusions on that surface, I want to be able to pull the legs out. So I want to be able to extrude the legs. Okay? From the top of this, I want to be able to extrude that top part. I want to be able to pull this part up right here. So I'm going to do a little bit of planning and make sure that my divisions line up with where the legs should be and make sure it lines up with where that top part of that desk should be. Okay? So I'm going to add some divisions. So you can type them in. That's the long way, the easy way, virtual slider. Click on the word and middle mouse button drag. Okay? So I'm just going to middle mouse button drag until I have a good amount of divisions here. Let's see. I'm going to have these. Let's see that there. That should give me enough for the top of this and then the leg. And I'll go in with the depth. And let's see, that should be good there. So I'm going to go with 4 divisions one way, the long way, or the short way, and then 5 divisions the long way. Okay? So yours should look like this, because this part is important that these do match, that we have 4 in one direction and 5 in the other. All right, another thing that might mess you up, let me show this real quick, is that if I have this cube here, and I go into component mode, so I'm grabbing vertices, edges, or faces, and I start to scale this up, and then I go over to my polycube options and I start adding divisions, you can see what happens to the surface. Okay? Maya remembers the vertice numbers that I scaled up. Originally I have 8 vertices, I have 8 points that make this thing, and I scaled those 8 vertices up, but now I'm adding more vertices. So what happens is it remembers those 8 vertices that scaled up, applies it to the new one, and then we get this mess. So we don't do that. All right. Okay. So now that we have this, we need to rearrange. There we go. Okay. So now what we have to do is we have to take these divisions and put them in the right spots. Right now, if I were to grab this face and extrude it, that leg would be a big chunky leg. Okay, just so you can see what it looks like. If I grab that and I go to Edit Mesh and I say Extrude, you can see that's how big the leg is going to be, and that's not realistic for a computer desk. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take these divisions and I want to push the outer ones out further. Okay, I want to take this guy here. There's actually, I think, a drawing tool here, grease pencil. And I'll add a new frame. So this division right here, how wonderful that works. And this division right here, I want to pull those out. Okay, I want to bring them closer this way and that way. And then I want to do the same thing for this guy and this guy. I want to bring these closer to the edge this way and closer to the edge that way. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go to many ways we can do this. The easiest way, we're going to right click and go to Edge. Okay? So right click and hold, go to Edge. We're in blue mode here. And what I want to do is do what's called selecting an edge loop. So it loops all the way around. So I'm going to double click on this edge right here. So just double click on that edge. It loops all the way around. Okay? I'm going to shift double click on this edge. And it grabs that one. So far so good? Yes. Then we're going to switch to the scale tool. Okay? Now we have to make sure that we isolate this to just the one direction. I don't want to do this, grab the middle, and scale it because then it'll make my desk look funky. I want to just grab the one direction and scale that out. Okay? Until it's about a leg's width away from the edge.
Okay, say that again.
So here it is right here. I'm going to just scale this out like this until the distance between these two is about the leg's width. Okay? It's an eyeball thing. We're not trying to model this in real life. We're not trying to build it out of production. It's literally what is going to look good, and that's what we do. Good? All right. So now we're going to do the same thing the other way. We're going to grab this edge, shift click that edge, and scale it in the other direction, and try to make that little corner now square. Okay. Now just as a fun fact, here's another way I could have selected those. I'm just going to undo them just so you can see. I right click and go to Vertex, and then I can go to Wireframe, just Marquee and Marquee, and then scale those out. And then I spin this around, Marquee and Marquee, and scale those out. Okay? So you see there's different ways to do things. Obviously, you just try to find the best way for you to grab what you need to grab. All right, so now we're going to right click and go back to, not object mode, we're going to go to face mode. Okay, now we want to grab the bottom faces. We're going to pull the legs down. Okay, so it's very important that as we spin around, we look over in the bottom left corner of our screen where it says XYZ, and we verify that the Y is facing up. Okay, so as you spin around, the Y is facing up. Here's an example. If you look at my screen where the Y is facing down, that's not what you want because now my table is upside down. Okay, so we're looking at the underside of the desk. Our Y is facing up, and we're just going to click on and shift click those corner faces. Edit Mesh, under the face area, extrude, and then you're just grabbing the blue arrow and pulling the blue arrow straight down. Don't worry about getting this to look exactly like a desk. Don't worry about the height being too high or any of that, okay? If you only did one leg, hit undo until you see the extrude go away, and then do it again after you select the correct ones. It's very easy to extrude something like that, not realize I extruded it, not pay attention to it, and then just extrude again. and pull it out and think that everything's okay. Seemingly, it looks like I just have two extrusions, one right here, the other one right there. But if I look at my channel box, it says poly extrude phase 3, poly extrude phase 2, poly extrude phase 1. Big deal, I have 3, but the 2 look good. This will become an issue, trust me, okay? If I tried to put a bevel on this edge, it would freak out and probably blow up. So we have to pay attention to, as we're extruding stuff, that we're paying attention to make sure that we extruded once, so we have one extrude over there. We extrude twice, we have 2 extrudes, okay? So that's the legs. So now we're going to grab the top of the table and extrude the top of the table. So I'm going to select the areas of the top we want to grab. Okay, so I don't want to grab the whole top, I'm just grabbing these pieces here. This part would be the work area, and then the back part would be where that desk would be coming up. Okay? Spin around, make sure you don't have anything else selected. Sometimes it's very easy to accidentally select something else in the back. I'll show you the example of something random happening that we don't want to happen. So I'm going to extrude this. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to save my work for the day. I'm going to go home and be happy. I'm going to come back to class thinking I've made a lot of progress. And then I'm going to spin around to this side and say, what is that? I accidentally extruded this extra leg part out of here. And I can't just go through and delete this, because then I have a hole in the leg now, and now that's going to screw up all the other stuff that I've done. Okay? And also I have this weird surface under here. So we always make sure that as we're going through and selecting stuff, that we don't accidentally select something on the other side. Okay? A good check is wireframe. If you hit 4 to go into wireframe, you can spin around very easily and see what's selected. Also, cycling through your backgrounds makes it really apparent as to what's selected. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so now for this one, we're going to take this in a 2-step process. We're going to extrude this up here to this edge. So right at the bottom of this first shelf. Then we're going to extrude again for that shelf. We're going to extrude again for this. We're going to extrude again for that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 extrusions just to create the height of this, not the depth yet. Okay? The depth will be step 2. So we're going to edit mesh. We go to extrude. We grab the blue arrow and pull it up for the first one.
Was that extrude face?
Yes, always extrude face. Very rarely you would use extrude edge. Okay, then once you have it to that height, you extrude it again and pull it up a bit. And then we extrude again and pull it up a bit. Then we extrude again. If we were to delete this, it would just be an open area. Okay, so we can't delete it.
So we have to extrude it again?
Extrude it. Okay, so same thing. We're going to grab these areas that we want to now push in, and we just grab those faces, and we extrude it again. And again, we grab the blue arrow, and we push it in. And here's the trick to figure out how deep you need to go with it. You can either go into wireframe and see how far back you can go, or I'll typically just push it through the back and then push it back into it. Okay, because no one's going to really see the thickness of it. It's just a matter of what it looks like. Okay, so now we have the framework of the desk built. Okay, so now we can go through and tweak what the actual desk looks like as far as proportion-wise goes. Okay, when we're doing our initial setup, it's hard to kind of estimate as to, you know, where the desk is and all that stuff, how big the legs are compared to how big the top is. So what we can do is go to a side view. So we're going to, this is the easiest way to do this, is to hold the spacebar down, hold the left mouse on Maya, and just go to the right view. Oh, sorry, go to the front view. That's the one I want. Okay, go to whatever view it is that makes it look like we're looking at it from the side. Okay. You could also tap the spacebar, just tapping it and jumping into that view. All right, so now we're going to right click and go to vertex. And I want to marquee part of it. So watch how I do mine first, and then you can do it to yours. So I'm going to go to wireframe. I'm going to use Alt-B to change my background color so I can actually see it. And then all I'm going to do is just marquee some of these things and just pull them out. So right now I'm changing the width of that front of the desk, that work area of the desk. How deep do I want that work area to be? Okay, so I'm just changing where that is. I'm going to grab the top of this, and I can change the height of the legs. I'm going to grab the back of this, and I can change the depth of that bookcase. Okay, so you can see just by adjusting some of these things how we can really re-manipulate this whole box. Okay, so just grab some points and move it around. Make sure you're grabbing all of them and not just like, you know, I can't just grab these ones and do it, because that wouldn't make sense. I can't grab the middle ones and throw these up here because that doesn't make sense. Okay, don't get set on the direction that it's at now. After we model the chair, then we can come back and we can tweak this even more and say, you know what, now that I have a chair in here and I have a book and I have these other props, now I can reproportion how everything in the scene is looking. Okay, so at no stage during this is this ever like set in stone. Okay, so we're just going to hit F8 until we turn into the green mode. And then we're going to jump back to perspective the same way. Hold down spacebar, hold down left mouse, go to perspective. And what I like to do is I want to do bevels on this. Okay, I want to put bevels all over every one of these hard surfaces so that it doesn't look so boring. I mean, look at how boring that looks, how hard these edges are. That just makes it look boring. Okay, so before I do any beveling, I like to save a copy of it. So I hid my layers. I'm going to bring them back so I can see it. There we go. And I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to hit Control D. That duplicates my desk right where it is. And then I'm going to add it to a new layer. Okay. And my new layer I'm going to rename to be Original Models. And then I'm just going to hit the V to turn that off. Okay, so now I have a copy of my original desk before I've done the bevel on it, hidden on a layer, so that if at any point I realize, whoops, I screwed up, I can always go back to that original model's copy of it.
I'm gonna need you.
Okay, so now we're going to put a bevel on this surface. Now here's what we have to do in order to do this, because we don't want to do this, edit mesh bevel, because it adds bevels everywhere, even in places we don't need them. So you see here in the middle we have extra bevels. Off to the side here in these flat areas we have extra bevels. It does no good to have bevels in flat areas because it's not doing anything. It's not helping our geometry read better. Okay, especially if we added more divisions to this. Let's say I added 3 segments. You'll see all the extra divisions we're getting. Okay, so what we want to do is grab anything that has a right angle. If you remember our drawing where we drew perpendicular lines, that's what we were doing. Now the long way to do this is to do edge and to go through and click on each one of these edges that's at a 90-degree angle. And that's a horrible way to do it, and that's actually the way I made people do it last time, but I found a better way to do it. Okay, so we're going to go under Select, and we're going to go to Select Using Constraints. Okay, so under Select, Select Using Constraints, we're going to say Current and Next. And we're going to, nothing's in the box right now. It just says Current and Next and there's nothing in the box. We have to select the edges of this guy. So we're going to right click, go to Edge, and marquee all the edges. Okay, so we right click and hold, we go to Edge, and we grab all the edges of our box, our desk. Once we have the edges selected, inside of the tools, it'll actually show different properties that we can do this by. Okay, so we're going to go by under the geometry section, and under angle, we're going to tell it that we want to activate this feature, and we want to grab any angles that are at a minimum of 80 degrees and a maximum of 110. Okay? Now that's giving us a little bit of range here in case for some reason we're not exactly at 90 degrees for some of these. Okay? In mine it deselected everything, so I'm just going to marquee it again. And what we should see is that it now only highlights stuff that is at that range of 80 degrees and 110 degrees. By adding this little selection constraint in here, it saves us a lot of time from having to go through and pick every single one of those edges that's at a 90-degree angle. Typically what happens is people forget one edge, and then you have to undo or go back to the original one and reselect and then redo the whole thing. So very cool thing to be able to do. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to say close and reset. Okay, what that does is it closes that tool, resets it back to the other one. If we left it on, then it would only allow us to select edges at 90-degree angles. Okay, so now we go up to Edit Mesh, and we go to the edge area and go to Bevel. Okay, so now we should have a bevel on this, and then we can come over to the channel box area, click on Poly Bevel, and let's add another segment. So we'll go to 2, and we'll change our fraction to 0.2. That looks good. I'm trying to find a nice little bevel here. If this is wood, typically they kind of break off the corners so it's not so harsh. So it's nice little rounding right at the edges of it. Okay? So whatever numbers work for you, that's what you should punch in to make that look nice. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to hit F8 again until we get this into the green. See, until he turns green, we're back in object mode. And then we're going to rename this up here where it says P-cube 1 or 2. Just rename that to be desk. Enter. Okay, and then we'll file, save as. Desk_001. I also advise you throw your last name in there at some point. Okay, so Sarcona_desk_001. It allows you to know whose file it is. It allows you to know what stage you're at, and it also allows you to know the iteration. When we model the chair, we're going to call it Sarcona Chair 001, or 002. All of it's going to be inside that same file. Okay. Now this is where, just for fun, you can see. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to create this whole thing for you, so you can see once you get used to the software, how quickly you can start to move in it. I said 4 and 5. There, good.
Well, how do you know how many divisions to put in there?
Because we already did 4 and 5, then I knew it was 4 and 5. Otherwise, I just kind of estimate based on what we're looking at. And if I needed to add more divisions, I can just add more divisions using one of those tools I showed earlier.
You can take them away too?
Yes, we can. We have to be careful though. If we take a division away, it doesn't necessarily take the vertices away. And I'll show that once I'm done remodeling this thing. One of your hotkeys was G to repeat the action. So instead of going back to the extrude, I'm just hitting G, redo the extrude. There we go. Duplicate, throw it on a layer, rename it, whatever. That was just lucky that that was already set to that. There's my bevel. 2 segments, 1 to 2. Okay, and then again, at any point, I can go through and say I need a little bit more thickness on this desk here. I need this to be a little bit thinner, so I'll just grab these and move it. Grab that and move it. you have to be careful you grab the right stuff. Okay, so you can see how quickly, after you've done this a few times, you can, by the end of this class, that's how quickly you'll be moving to, if you were to recreate this whole assignment. Okay, maybe not as quick, but you'll be pretty quick. Okay. Now there are some things that I'm not doing in here. You'll see that I'm moving stuff a lot, and one of you might ask, if not out loud, at least in your head, why is he moving everything and just not scaling it? The reason I'm not scaling it at this point is I don't want to start scaling up any of these bevels that we have. If I were to grab this here and I started scaling this, come on, there we go. What's happening is that bevel up top is now getting stretched out, okay? And I don't want that bevel to start elongating because that would make that bevel look different from all the other bevels. So what I do is I grab those points and I move those points, and then there's no scaling, okay? And then the other question was, can't we delete edges? If I go to edge and I double click an edge and I just hit the delete key, you'll see that that edge goes away. But if I right click now and go to vertex, you'll see that there's still vertices hanging out here that shouldn't be there. Okay? Every time I delete an edge, it should also delete the vertices accompanying it. Okay, so anytime I delete an edge, I either go to edit mesh, right there, delete edge vertex, okay? Or I just use the hotkey control delete, which works. Control delete. And now if I go to vertex, you'll see there's no vertices there. Again, this is one of those things where you're like, big deal, no vertices, I don't care about that. But now if I were to take this and try to do a bevel, or yeah, just try to do a bevel on this piece, it won't let me. It gives me an error saying you can't do a bevel on this piece because you have these funky vertices just kind of hanging out, okay? So it's just one of those things you just have to be aware of, that if you do want to delete ones, you use control delete to delete edges. If I want to add them in there, that's where I could use the mesh tool, insert edge loop, and drop a couple in here. Now you see it's even giving me an error here. It doesn't like that I'm doing this, but there's other tools for that as well. So that's fine. These middle ones we actually don't need. Delete that. Delete this layer. And bring back the one I just hid. Show last hidden. There we go. We don't actually need these divisions right in the center. We can keep them there for fun. It's not going to hurt anything, okay? And those 2 extra divisions isn't going to do us any harm. All right? So now that's our desk. We've saved it. We're good, okay? When you come in next class, and for the rest of this class, you can start referencing the videos that's in here, okay? Now here's my tip on watching any video ever, is first take them off the server. They're all inside resources, 2510 lectures, and then desk is where all the desk lectures are. Take them from here. They're also on YouTube, but you can't play them on YouTube if you don't have internet, okay? You also can't control the speed or jump back very quickly, and it's a very clumsy interface as far as, you know, what we're trying to do. I like to watch all my videos, not just my videos, but all the videos that I watch. I watch through VLC, and I do this specific thing here. Let's hit play.
Very first actual assignment.
All right, so I'll do that, and then I'll speed it up. Okay, nope, that's too fast. Okay, and I watch typically all videos at, this is 2.5 times the original speed, at 2.5 times the original speed. That way I can see an overview of all the processes that's going on. Then I'll come back, if I need to, you guys will most likely have to, come back and then watch it at regular speed to catch all the little stuff, okay? Sometimes it helps to be able to go through and see, you know, what are we doing here? What is the, you know, what's he blabbing about? Oh, we're making a desk. Got it. Now I can go back and then I understand some of the steps that we're doing, okay? And there's the chair. There's the whole modeling of the chair part that you're going to be following next. Now you'll see that these table legs, when you speed it up too much, it actually goes a little distorted. The table legs that are here are a little bit tapered. That's something we could also do too. We didn't taper the legs at this point. But what's cool about our history is that I can come back to that very first extrude that we did, and I can go down to offset, and I could add a tiny bit of offset, and you'll see now my legs are tapered on my table. Okay? It's not important for this specific one. I don't think a computer desk would actually have tapered legs. But if you have the history there, you can do it. If not, it's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Okay? But you'll see that the chair, as I watch the chair part of this video, is essentially it's the same thing that we looked at doing for the tabletop. We grabbed the divisions, we put them where we want the legs to be, we extruded the legs down, then we can add divisions and start extruding the back up. Okay? If you don't use VLC, it's like a crazy awesome tool. Okay, I'm adding divisions here. And eventually we'll get into this area of creating these little back parts and all that stuff too. Okay? So my recommendation for any video that you do is to watch it through once, fast motion, get an overview of the process, or watch half of it. You know, if we're doing the desk and the chair, watch the desk half and then go back and do the desk, watch the chair half, go back and do the chair. And then go through and do it. Okay? In this video, like I said before, this is using Maya 2014. It doesn't have the tools in the same spot, but they're essentially the same tools. If I say go to extrude, you're going to edit mesh, extrude under faces. If we use the bridge tool, then under edit mesh, under face, there's bridge. Okay, so you just have to look down under face typically is where the tools are. Okay, or under mesh tools for the other stuff. Now there's also in this one when I do the chair and we do the bevel, this is so you can see the whole process. This is the long way to select all those individual things to do that. Now that you have that selection constraint kind of like under your belt and you've done it at least once, use that instead. Okay? If you find something that works better, do that. Don't be afraid to kind of deviate from the lecture as long as you're ending up with the same thing. If I modeled this chair and you're like, cool, I'll model that chair, but then I also want to add a cushion to it. Add a cushion to it, okay? Or if you want to add, instead of, you know, these legs, you want to add some other fancier legs, you can do that too, okay? Don't be afraid to ever play with the software because that's what essentially what's going to help you learn is just playing with this stuff. Okay, and then there's even a guy that I imported at some point just to kind of test out to see ratio. How big is the chair if this guy's sitting in the chair, and then how big does the desk need to be to get all that stuff to work? There you go, sit down in the chair. And then there's the book and how, going through the book modeling. And you'll see this first assignment, it's a lot of the same stuff. It's divisions, scaling the divisions to get them in the right spot or moving them, and then extruding. That's it. Okay? So next time you come in, we're going to go through the chair part, and we're going to go through the book part together, and then after that, you guys are going to be on your own to continue following these other videos. Okay? There's a couple things I want to make sure I walk you through in these first couple just to make sure you're comfortable at least with the interface to start doing the videos without me saying click here, click here, click here. Alright? If you're not comfortable with what we did today with the desk, rewatch the video. I'm going to put it up on Angel so you can watch it. Watch it again. Follow the video. Make a new desk. Make 17 new desks. I don't care. The more stuff you put in at the front to understand these tools, the easier it's going to be when you're doing the next project and the next thing. Okay? I don't want anyone in week 15 or 16 to be like, oh, I didn't learn anything this semester because I didn't apply anything that first 4 weeks of class and didn't learn what I needed to support that stuff. All right? All right. So, the end of every day, we save our work. We've already saved it, so we don't need to save it again. We close Maya down. We take our preferences and we re-back them up. That way we have a copy of them. We have to wait for Maya to actually shut down first. Okay, and then we copy our preferences. We go to our folder. We delete the old ones. And we paste in the new ones. Not that anything's changed in the preferences, except for now that we have that desk project in there. Okay. Also, just for your own funness, think of other things you might want to add to your desk. You can use Google, great resource for finding images. Oops. Messy. messy computer desks are the ones you would want to look at, because those ones are loads of stuff that you could find to add to yours. Look at that, a sock. How awesome would a sock be in your scene? Okay, we're not modeling a monitor. We're not modeling any cans. We're not modeling most of the stuff that's on this desk. We're modeling a very minimal items: a cup, a pen, a pencil, the Newton's cradle, a globe. Yes, sir.
Is there a way you could just take an image and just like, work with it? Just like.
Yes, we can do stuff like that too. That gets a little bit more advanced. A lot of the stuff that we should look at should be like easier stuff to do. Last semester, I don't know how it happened, but like 4 people found the same tutorial on YouTube for modeling. For modeling a Pepsi can. They found the same can modeling tutorial. There it was. And they just followed the tutorial, and they, this is like 5 minutes. This one's 34. It's a little bit more involved. That's 2014. Okay. So they followed the video, and then they had a pop can that they could add to their scene. Someone else added a computer monitor. Someone else added a bunch of DVDs, and then what else was it? A bag of chips and a bag of snacks. There's a lot of different things you can add to your scene to make you feel more comfortable in it. Okay, my lectures and the class content can only take you so far. You have to push yourself to kind of understand it a little bit further. When I was in school, I didn't, here's the tutorial, let me do that and get it out of the way, and then I can leave early. I did that stuff, and then I played with all the tools that I learned. Okay? You should, at some point between now and next class, go through and make sure you understand how to grab faces, how to extrude things, how to scale edges out, how to scale vertices, how to move things around. That way you're just more comfortable when you get to it. Okay? So that's all I have for you guys today. Keep those things in mind. We're going to continue working on this. And this will be due, like I said, sometime in October, typically 4 weeks from today.